It all blew up with a ping. Yeah, a single, stupid notification on a phone screen. A message that wasn't even for him. That's all it took. One careless swipe, one dumb string of words, and the life I knew, the cozy little world I'd built, the man well, the man I married. All of it just detonated. You think you know what devastation feels like? You think you get betrayal? You haven't got a clue. Because what came next wasn't just a divorce, some messy split. Oh no, what he did, what he orchestrated. That wasn't payback. That was pure annihilation. And the sickest part? He made damn sure I watched every second of it. They call it a happy marriage, and looking from the outside, I guess ours was. Daniel and me. 10 years, nice house, matching cars, those yearly holidays to places that looked great on Instagram. We had the whole script memorized. He was stable, predictable. A sturdy oak, everyone said. Solid, reliable, and so mind-numbingly boring it made me want to scream. Is that me trying to justify it? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't owe anyone an explanation. But a woman has needs, right? Needs that go way beyond a perfectly manicured lawn and a sensible bedtime. There's a spark, a fire that all that domestic bliss tries its hardest to snuff out. Daniel, bless his cotton socks, was more wrapped up in quarterly budget reports than in the smoldering embers of what I was starving for. He was a good provider, I'll give him that. He gave me security. He gave me routine. He gave me a life plenty of people would kill for. And I guess, at the start, I did too. Or at least, I told myself I did. Then Julian showed up. Julian was different. He was the storm to Daniel's endless calm, the wildfire to his meticulously planned campfire. He saw me. Not the wife, not the planner of perfect dinner parties, but the woman who was suffocating under all that so-called perfection. Was it an affair? Yeah, technically. I like to think of it as a lifeline, a desperate gasp for air in a life that was slowly, elegantly, and oh so politely choking the life out of me. It wasn't about love, not really. It was about feeling alive, about feeling wanted, about anything other than the monotonous tick-tock of my gilded cage. I was careful, you bet, meticulously careful. Separate phone, alibis that were rock solid, a performance worthy of an Oscar when I was at home, playing the dutiful, if maybe a bit distant, wife. Daniel didn't suspect a thing. How could he? He was too busy color-coding his sock drawer or whatever equally thrilling hobby filled his evenings. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He was living in a fool's paradise, happy in his ignorance, and for a while it actually worked. I had my escape, he had his blissful oblivion, everyone was, well, not happy, but stable, manageable. Or so I thought. The universe, or maybe just my own damn carelessness, had other ideas. The kind of ideas that don't just unravel your life, they shred it to pieces. It's easy to judge, isn't it? Sitting there, on your high horse, you're thinking, she deserved it. And maybe some tiny, insignificant part of me agrees. But you don't understand the years of quiet rot, the slow death of 1,000 little hopes, the ache of being looked at but not really seen. Julian was a symptom, not the disease. The disease was a marriage that had flatlined long before, even if only one of us had the guts, or maybe the recklessness, to admit it by looking for something more. Or maybe I was just selfish. The point is, the reasons, the justifications, they all burned to ash that one Tuesday afternoon. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays were normally Daniel's late day at work, giving me a pretty comfortable window. I'd just gotten back from a late lunch meeting. I still had that glow, that illicit thrill, the feeling of being a completely separate person from Mrs. Daniel Henderson. I was careless, distracted, humming even. The text came through to my other phone, the one Julian knew about, the one Daniel shouldn't have even known existed, let alone where I stashed it. The message was nothing, really, just Julian confirming our plans for the weekend, something about a little boutique hotel out of town. Explicit enough to be damning, mundane enough to be forgotten under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. I'd left the damn phone on the kitchen island, half buried under a pile of mail I hadn't bothered to sort. I was upstairs, changing, washing off the afternoon when I heard Daniel come home. Early. Way too early for him. The silence after he came in was what hit me first. No cheerful, "Honey, I'm home." No sound of him putting his briefcase down, just silence. A thick, heavy, suffocating silence that crawled up the stairs and wrapped itself around my throat. I came down slowly, a sick feeling coiling in my gut. And there he was, standing by the kitchen island, not looking at the mail, not looking at me, just staring at the small, glowing screen of my phone. Julian's text lit up for him to see. The world just stopped. The air crackled. I could see the muscles in his jaw working, the slight tremor in his hand as he held that tiny, treacherous piece of plastic and glass. When he finally looked up, his eyes, they weren't the eyes of the Daniel I knew, the mild, predictable Daniel. These were cold, like flint, like shards of ice. He didn't shout. He didn't scream. God, that would have been easier. Instead, he just said, his voice chillingly calm, "Who is Julian?" The floor just vanished beneath me. The carefully built walls of my double life didn't just crumble, they exploded. Deny it? How? The proof was right there, glowing under his gaze. I tried, of course, stumbled through some pathetic story about a work colleague, a misunderstanding. The words sounded hollow even to my own ears. He just stared, that icy gaze never wavering. Then the anger came. Not the explosive kind I'd half expected, the kind you see in movies. This was a slow burn, a controlled demolition. He started asking questions, quiet, precise, each one like a scalpel slicing through my lies. When did it start? How often? Where? He didn't raise his voice, but the intensity, the sheer, raw fury simmering just beneath that calm surface, was terrifying. It was like watching a dormant volcano suddenly start to smoke. I broke, of course, confessed. Bits and pieces at first, then the whole sordid, stupid story came tumbling out. I cried, I pleaded. I think I even tried to blame him, his distance, his lack of something. He just listened, his expression impossible to read. The more I talked, the angrier I felt. Angry at being caught, angry at his coldness, angry at the universe for this sick joke. How dare he make me feel like this after years of his benign neglect? The absolute audacity. The immediate fallout was swift. He packed a bag that night. Said he was going to his brother's. No tears, no dramatic exit, just a quiet click of the door that echoed like a gunshot in the sudden emptiness of the house. I remember sinking to the floor, a strange mix of relief and dread washing over me. Relief that the charade was finally over, dread for whatever was coming next. But even then, in my wildest, most terrified dreams, I couldn't have predicted the clinical, devastating precision of his revenge. I thought I'd wrecked the marriage. I had no clue he was about to wreck my entire life. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, accusations, and a crushing silence from Daniel. He only communicated through his solicitor, some shark in a fancy suit, whose letters felt like they were written in ice. They talked about divorce, irreconcilable differences, dividing up assets. Standard stuff, I thought. Ugly, painful, but standard. I braced myself for a fight, for long, drawn-out negotiations, for the usual messy untangling of a 10-year partnership. What I didn't expect was Daniel's apparent surrender. He agreed to my terms with an almost unsettling speed. The house? I could have it, he'd move out. Spousal support? He proposed a figure that was frankly more generous than I'd dared to hope for. There were a few conditions, sure, things tied to selling some joint assets, but nothing that seemed out of line. His lawyer painted it as Daniel wanting a quick, clean break, wanting to move on. And I, in my arrogance, in my relief, I actually bought it. I pitied him. Poor Daniel, I thought, heartbroken, defeated, so eager to put all this behind him that he was practically giving me whatever I wanted. It fed my story, you see, the story where I was the one who'd been unfulfilled, the one driven to find comfort somewhere else. His quick agreement, his seeming eagerness to just vanish from my life, it almost felt like he was admitting his own failures in the marriage. Or so I spun it to myself. Julian, bless his fleeting heart, had disappeared at the first hint of trouble. A sorry, can't do drama hext was his pathetic goodbye. So I was alone, figuring out this new, uncomfortable reality. But with Daniel seemingly giving in so easily, a strange sense of power started to bloom in the wreckage. I'd survived the initial explosion. I'd actually come out of it better off, even. The house was mine. Financial security seemed locked in. I could finally build a life on my own terms, free from the chains of a loveless marriage. That's the manipulative genius of what he was up to. He lulled me into a completely false sense of security. He made me believe I was in control. He let me think he was just a broken man, scurrying away with his tail between his legs. Every legal paper signed, every agreement we reached, felt like another win for me. I was orchestrating my new future. Or so I imagined. I even started to feel a little smug. He was making it all so easy. Looking back, the signs were there, of course. The tiny, almost unnoticeable smirk on his lawyer's face during meetings, the way Daniel avoided any direct contact, his silence deeper than any screaming match could ever be. It was too smooth, too straightforward. But I was too wrapped up in my own drama, my own self-pity and rising sense of triumph to see it. I saw a man retreating, licking his wounds. I didn't see the predator backing up to get a running start. He was planting seeds of destruction, watered by my own arrogance and his terrifying patience. And I was oblivious, happily tilling the soil for him, thinking I was cultivating my own garden of freedom. The calm before the storm isn't just an expression, it's a strategy. And Daniel, the man I'd dismissed as predictable and dull, was about to prove he was a master strategist. The first punch landed about 3 months after the divorce was final. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable at first. A credit card declined at the grocery store. Annoying, embarrassing. But I figured it was a glitch, a bank error. I called the company, expecting a quick fix. Instead, I got some cold, unhelpful agent telling me the card had been canceled due to suspicious activity, flagged at the primary account holder's request. The primary account holder. Daniel. We had separated our finances, or so I thought. But there were still joint accounts we were in the process of closing. Loose ends he'd assured me his people would sort out. Then came the letter about the mortgage. Apparently, during our amicable settlement, a clause I'd barely glanced at, buried deep in the financial disclosures Daniel's lawyer had so kindly prepared, said that if certain jointly held investments, which he managed, underperformed by a specific amount after the divorce, the liability for any shortfall on the mortgage refinancing would shift entirely to me. And wouldn't you know it, those investments, ones that had been rock solid for years, suddenly, inexplicably, tanked. The bank was now demanding a huge sum I simply didn't have. The house, my house, was about to be repossessed. Panic really started to set in. I tried to reach Daniel. His number was disconnected. His lawyer replied with a curt email saying Mr. Henderson was traveling indefinitely and couldn't be reached. All communication had to go through him, and frankly, he had no more information on Mr. Henderson's personal investment strategies. It was like dominoes falling, one after another, each one triggering the next in a cascade of financial ruin. That generous spousal support? It was tied to those same investments, dependent on their performance. With their collapse, the payments dwindled to almost nothing. The car, the one I'd kept, turned out to have a balloon payment I'd been blissfully unaware of, a detail conveniently left out of the paperwork I'd so eagerly signed. Suddenly, I was drowning in debt, with no real income. My own savings, the little I had stashed away, vanished trying to plug the leaks. I tried to find a job, but my resume, padded with years of being Mrs. Daniel Henderson, didn't exactly scream employable in any field that paid enough to keep the wolves from the door. The life I'd taken for granted, the ease, the comfort, it was all built on a foundation that Daniel had just systematically dynamited. And the anger, oh, the anger. It was a living thing inside me now, coiling and writhing. This wasn't just a man scorned, this was a calculated, cruel, and utterly devastating campaign to destroy me. How could he? The man who had once promised to love and protect me, the man I'd dismissed as weak, as predictable, he was proving to be anything but. He was proving to be a monster, maybe one I'd created. Or maybe he was a monster all along, hidden under that calm exterior. Every canceled card, every threatening letter from a creditor, every sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling wondering how I was going to survive felt like his victory. He wasn't just taking away the money, he was taking away my dignity, my security, my future. He was making me pay, not just for the affair, but for my arrogance, for dismissing him, for ever thinking I could outsmart him or come out on top. The man I thought I'd broken had instead meticulously broken me into 1,000 pieces. And the worst part? He wasn't even there to see it. Or so I thought. His absence was somehow more infuriating, his revenge delivered remotely, impersonally, and so effectively. Just when I thought it couldn't possibly get any worse, Daniel, or rather the ghost of Daniel, began his attack on my social standing and reputation. It started subtly, like all his moves. Whispers, rumors, the kind that spread like wildfire through the tight-knit circle of friends and acquaintances we'd shared for years. Suddenly, lunch invitations dried up. My calls went unreturned. When I did bump into people we knew, there were these awkward silences, averted gazes, or worse, pitying looks that made my skin crawl. I couldn't understand it. Surely an affair, while a bit scandalous, wasn't grounds for being completely socially exiled in this day and age, right? People had affairs all the time. It was messy, sure, but people moved on. Then I found out why. Daniel hadn't just told them about the affair. Oh no, that would have been too simple. Too ordinary for his newfound Machiavellian talents. He, or someone acting on his meticulous instructions, had spun a far more poisonous story. He'd painted me not just as an adulteress, but as a manipulative, gold-digging sociopath who had systematically planned to ruin him, who had faked affection for years while plotting to take him for everything he had. He'd twisted my actions, my desperate need for something more, into a cold, calculated scheme. He'd apparently gathered evidence, emails I'd sent to friends years ago complaining about parts of our marriage. Taken out of context, they made it sound like I was building a case against him from day one. Financial records, cleverly distorted to suggest I was siphoning off money. Even Julian, it turned out, had been interviewed by someone. I suspected Daniel's lawyer or a PI, and his words, probably coerced or twisted, painted me as the relentless pursuer, the one who wouldn't take no for an answer. The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. My attempts to defend myself were useless. Who would believe me? The woman who had already admitted to lying and cheating? Against the carefully crafted image of Daniel, the stoic, heartbroken victim, a man of integrity pushed too far, I was radioactive. Friends I'd known for years, women I'd shared my deepest secrets with, now looked at me with suspicion and outright disgust. The social circles I'd once navigated so easily were now hostile territory. The humiliation was constant, a dull ache that never went away. Every time I left the house, it was an ordeal. Every familiar face a potential accuser. He wasn't just bankrupting me financially. He was bankrupting me socially, isolating me, turning me into a complete pariah. He was stripping away everything that had defined who I was, layer by painful layer. And the truly infuriating part? He was doing it all with clean hands, from a distance. No public fights, no direct accusations from him. Just a slow, steady drip of poison into the wells of my relationships. It was insidious, it was brilliant, it was utterly, soul-crushingly cruel. He knew how much I cared about perception, how much that perfect life, even the illusion of it, meant to me. And he was torching it all, making sure I had nothing and no one left to turn to. The anger I felt was so strong it almost felt like a physical force, a fire in my gut that had nowhere to go, no one to consume but myself. He was dismantling my world brick by brick, and I was completely powerless to stop him. I was trapped, isolated, and an outcast, all thanks to the quiet, unassuming man I'd so foolishly underestimated. The man whose payback was proving to be a masterpiece of cold, calculated destruction. The final nail in my coffin wasn't financial, nor was it social. It was far more personal, far more devastating than I could have ever imagined. It arrived in a single unmarked envelope at my now nearly empty, foreclosed house. I was just days away from being evicted, packing the miserable scraps of my life into cardboard boxes, the taste of defeat bitter in my mouth. Inside the envelope wasn't a legal document or another demand from a creditor. It was a photograph, a recent photograph. It was of Daniel and Julian. They were sitting at an outdoor cafe, sunlight dappling through the leaves overhead, laughing, clinking champagne glasses, looking for all the world like the best of friends, celebrating some shared victory. My blood ran cold. It just didn't make any sense. Julian, who had ghosted me at the first sign of trouble. Daniel, the man Julian had helped me betray. Laughing? Together? Then I saw the date stamp in the corner of the photograph. It was from 6 months before the infamous text message, 6 months before Daniel had discovered my affair. The world tilted violently on its axis. My mind was reeling, struggling to process the impossible. I flipped the photo over. A single sentence was neatly typed on the back. He was always mine. You were just the entertainment. Checkmate. It couldn't be. It couldn't, but it was. The pieces, the jagged, confusing pieces of the last year, suddenly, horrifically, slammed into place with sickening clarity. Daniel hadn't just reacted to my affair. He'd known all along. He'd possibly even orchestrated the whole damned thing. Julian wasn't my escape. He was Daniel's pawn. Their initial meeting, his undeniable charm, the way he seemed to understand my unspoken frustrations, had it all been a setup from the very beginning? The affair wasn't my secret betrayal of a naive husband. It was a trap, meticulously laid, and I had walked right into it, blind, arrogant, and stupid. The text message wasn't an accident. It was the trigger Daniel had been waiting for, the public proof he needed to unleash his perfectly planned devastation. His shock, his quiet departure, it was all an act. A brilliant, chilling performance. He hadn't been heartbroken, he'd been bored, perhaps? Or maybe he'd always had this cruel streak, this terrifying capacity for intricate, devastating revenge, hidden all those years beneath that mild-mannered facade. Julian was likely paid, or promised something substantial to play his part, to lead me down the garden path, to ensure I incriminated myself so thoroughly there was no way out. The revenge wasn't just payback for infidelity. It was something far colder, far more complex. It was a game to him. A long, elaborate game where I was the unwitting fool, dancing to his tune all along. He hadn't just wanted to punish me for the affair, he'd wanted to humiliate me, to strip me of everything, to demonstrate his utter superiority, his absolute control. He wanted to prove he could destroy me from the inside out, using my own desires and weaknesses against me. The rage that filled me then was a different kind. It wasn't just the anger of being ruined. It was the incandescent fury of being played so completely, so profoundly. Of realizing my entire perception of the last few years, of him, of Julian, of myself, had been a carefully constructed illusion. He hadn't just wrecked my marriage and my life, he'd stolen my agency, my reality. He'd made me a puppet in his sick, twisted show. The payback wasn't for what I did to him. It was for who he was, and I was merely a convenient target for a game I never even knew I was playing. That one text didn't just wreck my marriage. It revealed that my marriage, my affair, my entire life had been a lie orchestrated by the man I thought I knew. The man who was now raising a glass with my lover in celebration of my utter demolition. So, here I am. No house, no money, no friends, or at least none who will admit they even know me. The woman who thought she had it all, who thought she was smart enough to play the system, to have her cake and eat it too. Now, I have nothing but the taste of ash in my mouth, and this burning, all-consuming rage that has absolutely nowhere to go. Did I deserve some of it? Probably. I'm not that naive. I made choices. I betrayed a vow. But this? This calculated, systematic annihilation? This intricate web of deceit designed not just to punish, but to utterly obliterate? No one deserves that. No one deserves to have their life turned into someone else's sick game, their emotions and vulnerabilities exploited with such cold, clinical precision. Daniel is out there, somewhere, probably still laughing. He won. He didn't just win, he rewrote the entire game, cast himself as the puppet master and left me as the discarded marionette, strings cut, lying in a tangled, broken heap. And Julian? I imagine he got his payday, his 30 pieces of silver, and moved on to the next unsuspecting fool. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Daniel served it frozen, with a side of utter contempt and a smirk I can still picture in my nightmares. My life isn't just wrecked. It's a crater, a smoking ruin where something once stood. And the anger. Oh, the anger keeps me warm at night. It's the only thing I have left. Some people find redemption. Some find forgiveness. I find myself marinating in a bitterness so profound it's become a part of my DNA. He wanted to wreck my life as payback. He succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, I'm sure. But what he doesn't know, what he can't possibly comprehend, is that you can't kill something that refuses to die. You can't silence a voice that still screams, even if only on the inside. He thinks he's had the last laugh. Maybe he has, for now. But this story, my story, isn't quite over. He wrecked my life, yes, but some things, when broken, become sharper, more dangerous, and I've got a lot of time to think, a lot of time to plan. Let him enjoy his victory. The game might not be as over as he thinks.